What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. This week, we'll of course a breakdown of Michael Pittman Jr. versus DJ Moore versus DK Metcalf. If you've got a trio of players you want to see me break down next week, put it in the comment section below, upvote the responses you agree with. So let's start things off with Michael Pittman Jr. entering his 5th year in the NFL, turning 27 in October. Age is not a concern. All three of these wide receivers we'll go over today will be 27 at some point during the season, so age is not a concern for any of them. Pittman has seen his receptions grow every single season since his rookie year. He had 40, then he had 88 receptions in year 2, 99 in year 3, and then 109 last season. Last season was also a bit of a breakout for him. Points per game increased from 84th as a rookie, 25th in year 2, 29th in year 3, and then 19th last season in half PPR scoring. Counting stats weren't like an insane amount better, right? That's only 6, ranking spots ahead of where he was in year 2. But he was able to do that last season with almost entirely backup quarterback play. Remember back, Anthony Richardson was supposed to be the quarterback all season, but he effectively played only 2.5 games. That resulted in Gardner Minshew attempting over 85% of the Colts passes last season. When we look at the underlying metrics for Michael Pittman Jr. over reception perception, we get a better understanding of, how dominant he was. 80th percentile success rate versus man, 68th percentile versus zone, 93rd percentile success rate versus press coverage. Now, he's not going to burn anyone deep downfield, doesn't have top end speed, not great as a deep threat, but the Colts have a great coaching staff, and they obviously know this, and so they rarely ask him to do that, right? It's awful when players are miscast, and they're like, oh, you're bad downfield. Let's give you downfield routes 35% of the time. It's like they don't do that. They know he's not going to burn anyone to go, so they don't ask him to do it. We talk a lot about putting players in position to succeed, which seems so simple, so obvious, but many coaches refuse to do this. Not the Colts. Shane Steichen is, a really, really strong coach. He uses Pittman as a featured weapon on offense. He moves him around the formation. He has him run the routes that he is best at, which is mostly short and intermediate. Now, I don't want to comp him to Amon-Ra St. Brown, but they do have a lot of similarities, at least in how they're used. Neither one is going to be great as a field stretcher, but both are incredible operating in these short and intermediate areas of the field. Both can line up across the formation. And again, both have coaches that will scheme specific plays to get them open, which is awesome to see. What has people hesitating with Pittman this season is the Colts offense, and more specifically Anthony Richardson. Like I said before, he only played 2.5 games as a rookie, and people are genuinely concerned, which is a real concern, is can he stay healthy for a full season, especially because Minshew's not the quarterback anymore. Maybe you could look at it if Minshew was still the quarterback and be like, well, you know what? He did it last year, right? And so at least we know what we're getting if Richardson got injured. Well, he's not there anymore, right? He's on the Raiders. So now Joe Flacco is the backup, not Minshew anymore. My take on that, though, is I don't know. I mean, look at what Flacco did last season. And if the main appeal of the Colts and having Richardson there is that, they're going to play super fast, they're going to have a ton of plays, right? They're going to rank top 3 in pace, top 3 in plays run. They're going to lean pass heavy. These are things we know are going to happen with Richardson at quarterback. And so then you think, what happens if he gets injured? Because of what we saw last season with Flacco and him operating in the highest volume team in the NFL, we know that that's probably a role they'll just keep him in, right? Because we know Flacco's obviously not mobile. He ran the ball 12 times for 15 yards through 6 starts last season. We know they're going to air it out even if Joe Flacco's a quarterback. Flacco in his 6 starts last season, 44, 45, 44, 42, 29 in a win, and a big win, and then 46 pass attempts. So he's throwing in the mid 40s. They went 4-2 over that span, so it wasn't them, going 0-6 and him just having to throw the ball. He operated on an offense that played fast, threw the ball a ton. And so that's my guess as to why they brought him in, being like, okay, if Richardson were to get injured, obviously we want Richardson staying healthy for Pittman in fantasy, but if it were to happen, I still think this is such a great offensive environment that I'm really not worried about the injury. Again, if he gets hurt, Pittman is going to see a drop in production because Richardson will still elevate this offense. They will score more touchdowns. They will have more yardage. It'll be a better offense with Richardson at quarterback than Flacco. But if Richardson got hurt, I still think Pittman is going to have a great ceiling and incredibly strong floor as well. That's Pittman. How about DJ Moore? Moore entering his 7th season in the NFL, but since he was an extremely young rookie, he'll be 27 all season. Moore has commanded at least 118 targets in 5 consecutive years, but receptions have definitely fluctuated a lot. He dipped down to 63 receptions in 2022 thanks to just a 53% catch rate, and then he spiked to 96 receptions last season thanks to a career high 70.6% catch rate. The difference, quarterback play. To a degree. I mean, it's not like he had amazing quarterback play last season, but you look back to 2022, he was catching passes from a combo of Baker, Darnold, and PJ Washington with a combination of Matt Rule and Steve Wilkes running the show. I bring that up because coaching does matter a lot. You hear Baker and you're like, well, Baker's not that bad, right? He broke out last season. That was Baker under Dave Canales, who's like the quarterback whisperer, right? He's a fantastic coach, especially for getting the most out of quarterbacks. This season, you are probably going to see Sam Darnold start the season with the Vikings and probably look pretty decent because Kevin O'Connell is a great coach. DJ Moore has never once had both good coaching and good quarterback play. And if you look last season, it's like, well, he spiked for the 70.6% catch rate because he did have Fields, who, I mean, looking back, probably is one of the better quarterbacks he's played with. But even Fields, right? Every team passed over Fields in free agency. He's likely going to back up Russell Wilson all season. He had Tyson Bagent, I don't remember how to exactly say the last name, but he's obviously not that good. Like, he didn't have good quarterback play last season, and he still had 96 for 1,364 yards and 8 touchdowns. Now he's got Caleb Williams, who's definitely going to be, even in year one, the best quarterback DJ Moore has played with. So that is a really big positive for him. Unfortunately, I don't think that Shane Waldron is very good as an offensive coordinator. And then double unfortunately, you've got all these changes that the Bears made at wide receiver this offseason. They drafted Rome Odunze. You guys all know I'm very high on Rome Odunze. And then they traded for Keenan Allen, who's still got it. He's still an incredible wide receiver, even at a late stage in his career. Last season, DJ Moore was competing with Darnell Mooney and Tyler Scott at wide receiver for targets. So, of course, he's going to have nearly a 29% target share. And if you look back to 2022, top competition at wide receiver, Terrace Marshall Jr. and Shea Smith. Year before that, it's Robbie Chosen and Terrace Marshall Jr. Before that, it's Robbie Chosen and Curtis Samuel. Before that, it's Curtis Samuel and Jarius Wright. Before that, it was Curtis Samuel and Devin Funchess. Like, you see what I'm kind of saying there? Like, never in his career has he been competing with even competent wide receivers across from him. The one is Curtis Samuel, but like, if you're only competing with Curtis Samuel, that's not that much competition, right? It's not Rome Odunze and Keenan Allen that you're competing with. And I know on some of those teams you had McCaffrey, right? McCaffrey's commanding a lot of targets. But when we're looking at the wide receiver room and we're dropping back and we're throwing passes to wide receiver, it has never been even remotely as competitive as it is this season. And this isn't to say that DJ Moore isn't a good wide receiver, because he objectively is a fantastic wide receiver. I'm just highlighting the fact that there is definitely risk here, given that he's never had this much competition with wide receivers. So we don't kind of know what the target share is going to look like. And prior to last season, he has needed extreme volume to be fantasy viable. And even with really high-end volume in seasons prior, he still wasn't like incredible in fantasy, because he's never going to be someone that's going to get a lot of touchdowns. I mean, he spiked up to like 8-9 touchdowns last season. I think he had like the 1 rushing. So 8 receiving and 1 rushing. Great. But that was a spike up to that point. And then we consider that, you know, when you bring in Odunze, you bring in Keenan Allen, is he really going to spike from there? Like, is Caleb Williams elevating the offense enough to really account for all of that? I don't know. And I don't know that anyone really knows the answer as to who's going to be the most valuable wide receiver on this wide receiver room or in this wide receiver room. So it's a concern with DJ Moore. One more wide receiver we have to go over, then we'll rank all three, is DK Metcalf. Metcalf is entering his 6th season in the NFL, having missed only 1 game due to injury in his career. He is 6'3", 228 pounds, ran a 4.3340 at the combine, giving him 99th percentile speed, 100th percentile height adjusted speed, and is the 7th most athletic wide receiver of all time. He's also never had fewer than 900 receiving yards, never once had fewer than 6 touchdowns. In terms of half PPR points per game in his career, he was 44th as a rookie, then 10th in year 2, then 20th, 27th, and 20th. So he's been extremely consistent, but besides that breakout second season, he hasn't been able to really get back to wide receiver 1 production in fantasy. In fact, last season represented like a bit of a role change for Metcalf. They added in JSN, which we were all kind of looking at being like, okay, like now there's a lot more competition. JSN likely going to operate closer to the line of scrimmage. What's that going to do to like the route tree for Metcalf is efficiency. Definitely shifted things, right? He saw a lot more of a downfield centric role that resulted in his highest yards per reception of his career. It was like 16.9 yards per reception, a crazy high amount, but his lowest catch rate and his lowest receptions per game, that sort of evens out, right? Because he actually had a little bit of a spike in yards per target. So like it all kind of evens out, right? If you're going to change his roll up and have it more downfield, well, maybe the receptions drop, but when he hits on those receptions, they're worth more. So kind of even outs there. But I will say it would be nice for him to have a few more of those layup routes. Under Shane Waldron last season, the offense just didn't make a whole lot of sense. And like I said before, I'm not really a fan of Shane Waldron. I don't think he's very good as an offensive coordinator. He just didn't really use people properly. He kind of just put people in the roles, and he's like, okay, well, Metcalf big and fast, go downfield. JSN smaller, quicker, shiftier, only do short. But it's like both of these guys should be used in both areas, right? You should use JSN also downfield at times. You should give Metcalf layup routes because, big plays can happen at all areas of the field. You don't just need to chuck it downfield to Metcalf to get a big play. You can give him a screen pass. You can get him, running across the field close to the line of scrimmage. It doesn't have to be all downfield. So again, I don't like Shane Waldron. I just think he did a poor job given all of the talent that was on Seattle last season. Didn't do that great of a job. They seem to agree. They gave him the boot this offseason. They replaced him with Ryan Grubb. Now, we don't have, NFL level data on Grubb, but in my opinion, he is going to be a great offensive coordinator and is definitely going to elevate the Seattle offense, really bring out the best in his players, which are already great players. They should have made the playoffs last season for sure. They should have been a really strong offense. They disappointed greatly last season, but look at this wide receiver. I mean, JSN, Lockett, and Metcalf is sick. You've got 2 phenomenal running backs, and Geno Smith, who in our minds isn't an elite quarterback and definitely is not an elite quarterback, but he does a lot of things really well, and he can absolutely run a strong offense if he just has good coaching. I think Grubb is going to bring some really unique plays, especially in the screen game, that we haven't seen as much in the NFL. But just most importantly, I feel confident that he will be creative and that he will push the ball downfield. Both of those are massive positives for Metcalf. Metcalf still, the shining star for him is how dominant he can be if you get him moving quickly across the field and if you can get him the ball deep downfield. I think Grubb is going to be really good at doing that. And given who Metcalf is as a player, he has just jaw-dropping upside if you can find a way to use him properly. It's just been so wild that it seems like to this point in his career, Seattle has mostly taken Metcalf for granted until they really need him. Their general offensive philosophy, especially under Pete Carroll, has just been keep the game close in the fourth quarter because we think we can win the game in the fourth quarter. And really, we're only going to lean on Metcalf when the game or the season is on the line. Through 82 regular season games for DK Metcalf, he has 9 games with either 135 receiving yards or multiple receiving touchdowns. That is less than 11% of games. Yet, through only 4 playoff games, right? The season's on the line. You got to use your best players. He's done it 3 times in 4 games. And you can see it when you watch them play. Like, nobody can guard Metcalf half the time, but they enter the 4th. You look at his stat line. He has 2 catches for 35 yards on 2 targets, and you're just sitting there flabbergasted how they're just like not using him, not even looking his way, even though he's the best player on the field. I don't think that's going to be the case under Grubb. I think he is smart enough to understand how much of a mismatch Metcalf is, and that this team is at its best using 3 wide receiver sets, pushing the ball downfield in a way to remain aggressive, but understanding that that's not the only way you can gain explosive plays. Sometimes you just got to put the ball into the hands of your best players, let them make plays. I think he's going to do that with DK Metcalf. So, given all of that, how would I rank these 3? As you may have gathered, I like Seattle this season. I just like the upside of this team, and I think they're going to have a much stronger season than the general public thinks. And so I think Metcalf deserves to be ranked first on this list. We haven't seen that spike that he had in year 2 over the last 3 seasons, but I do think it's coming this season. And for those of you who like a sure thing, especially because, let's face it, if you draft a bust in the first 3 rounds, because all these guys are going in kind of like the round 3 range, if you draft a bust in round 3, you've got generally like a 70 to a 75% chance of hitting on a start-worthy player in round 3. And so if you draft a bust, most of the other players didn't. So you do kind of want to be safe. You want to hit on these players. Again, he's missed 1 game in his career due to injury. He's never had less than 900 yards, never had less than 6 touchdowns. He is safe. You know what you're getting with Metcalf. And not only do I think he has a really strong floor, DK Metcalf, he has one of the strongest ceilings of players we've seen, and I don't think he's hit his ceiling yet. I think he'll have a season where he finishes as a top 5 wide receiver, and that could happen this season. After Metcalf, I think it's really close, but my lean is Pittman. I just think there are too many question marks with DJ Moore. What's the split going to look like when all 3 wide receivers are healthy? Is Moore even going to be the target leader, or is it going to be Keenan Allen? Is that going to change in the second half of the season once Rome Odunze really gets going? Is he going to be the top wide receiver? What is the touchdown ceiling? Remember, in 4 of DJ Moore's 6 seasons in his career, he's had fewer than 5 receiving touchdowns. Now you've got Keenan Allen. Now you've got Rome Odunze. You've got all them to contend with. You've got DeAndre Swift, a pass-catching running back. There's just so many unknowns. I know with Pittman, there's a 99% chance that he's going to be the top target on this offense. Plus, that offense is going to play faster. They're going to run more plays. I actually trust their coaching staff, whereas I simply don't trust the Bears. So in half PPR, I'm going to rank them DK Metcalf, then Pittman, then DJ Moore. But for those of you who play in full PPR, Pittman does jump over Metcalf just because the reception gap and especially the ceiling for Pittman, he could have 120 receptions. That's just not in the range of outcomes for DK Metcalf. And so in half PPR, Metcalf, Pittman, Moore. In full PPR, Pittman, Metcalf, Moore. So if you watched this far, be sure to hit the like button. And if you're new here, hit subscribe as well and click the little bell icon next to it so you don't miss any more of this free content. And if you want to see my exact rankings for every player in every scoring format, you can do that on my website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. I'll be back tomorrow with another video. But that, my friends, is in this one. And thanks for watching.